Firstly, thank you so much for coming out on a practically frigid night. Yeah, I was communicating. I may have said this on Shabbat. I apologize if I'm repeating myself. First of all, hi everyone online. Those of you in Franklin, North Carolina, Winchester, Kentucky, etc. Yeah, that's my entourage. I don't travel with them, but they're here in spirit. So the other day, a buddy of mine was communicating. So where are you? Did I tell you this already? Where are you now, world traveler? Said Brandon, Florida. And I've gotten smart because I put in parentheses, Tampa. Getting really tired of, oh, I'm sorry, you must mean Bradenton. No, if I meant Bradenton, I would have said Bradenton. So frustrating. So he said, so how are things? Oh my God, Florida, gorgeous weather. I said, it was 37 degrees this morning. He said, oh my God, that's so incredibly hot. He's Israeli, he's thinking Celsius, it's scalding. I said, no, it's Fahrenheit. For those of you who are tuning in, particularly, I hear you have an NFL team in the neighborhood, the Buccaneers. I hope you all realize that you could be sitting at home watching this, so then you could turn on for the 8:30 start. I have had experience with my presence conflicting with American football. A number of years ago, I was invited to speak in a place called Bessemer, Alabama. I don't always get to play the big venues like Brandon. So I'm in Bessemer, Alabama, the Shabbat of Thanksgiving weekend. But there's a problem, because that is a religious holiday in Alabama. That's where you've got what did they call it, the Iron Bowl? Yeah. Yeah, Auburn versus University of Alabama. So Friday night when I spoke, and this was just supposed to be the teaser, we had 65 people. They said they never had that many people on a Friday night. That's good, because the next morning there were 11. We didn't even have a substitute, just 11. Okay, today, as I found when I went to the gym, the place was packed. It was packed because today is a special day that really requires us all to acknowledge. Today is the holiday in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King. One of the most outspoken supporters of the state of Israel, someone who stood against anti-Semitism and was, based on my study of American history, one of the few national leaders that this country had. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. The memory of the righteous should always be for a blessing. So it's a tremendous honor to speak on the day honoring Dr. King. I also want to take this opportunity for those who are listening online, those who are here, who've tried over the years to reach out, reach deep in their pockets, and help support me. Airfares, shockingly, have gone up more than the price of eggs in America. It's kind of shocking. So I want to take this opportunity, and as I plan my future trips to the U.S., likely to be in the time of the summer, when it will be warmer in Florida. If you guys have friends or relatives in communities somewhere that would, are with a group that loves Israel, keep me in mind. Okay, so here we've got the Temple Mount, the center of it all. People make mistakes all the time regarding the Western Wall. In fact, if memory serves me correct, where do I have to point this, Pastor Russell? That way. I think it's either Ariana or Gabriella that are sitting there pushing the nose switch whenever time I push this. Yes. Supposedly. This is the forward button. What am I doing wrong? Is there an on-off switch?
Try it now.
Try it now. Okay, you guys are going to do it? Next slide, please. Thank you, Ariana. Okay. The Harabayit, the Temple Mount. So people confuse all the time. We have a timeout on the field. Technical difficulty. The Western Wall. The Western Wall, right there, perfect, thank you. No, go to the next slide. No. Next one. Okay, perfect, hold it, stop. Don't move. Don't you make it move.
It's not working from here. Sorry.
As we say in Hebrew, no es mi problema. Okay, the Western Wall. You hear all the time in the media that the Western Wall is the single holiest site on earth to the Jewish people. In fact, Ivanka Trump said it herself when she visited our country, when she came a few years ago with her daddy. You may have remembered that. That is absolutely, unequivocally not correct. And that is the first thing that we're going to get really clear. What is holy, what isn't holy, why, and what's the situation? And I cannot think of another topic regarding Israel right now that is more in the news than the Harabayit, the Temple Mount. Much more so even than Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria, which in and of itself, by the fact that they exist, cause most of the American administration to have their heads blow up on a daily basis. Next slide, please. Okay. Here, you see an overview of the Temple Mount. Looking from the south going north, that's on one side. And the other side, you have two pictures of the Even HaShetiyah, the foundation stone, where according to Jewish tradition, God began the creation of the earth. That is the rock under the dome of the rock, right there. Now, we're going to see another picture of it shortly, but you may notice it looks like there are sections of it that have been chipped away or broken. They were. When the Christian Crusaders returned to Europe, they took sections of the stone as souvenirs. Bizarre. Okay, so when we say the stone, what are we talking about? This is the stone. We're going to go back through 4,000 years of history. I'm going to do it in about 7 minutes. Being half an Israeli and half a New Yorker, I can do that. So 4,000 years ago, Abraham gets a command from God to go to a certain spot, Mount Moriah. Today we call it the Temple Mount. He brought along his son, Yitzchak, Isaac. Y'all probably remember what's supposed to happen now. He's supposed to sacrifice him on that very same rock. Hate when that happens. But it's only a test of faith this time. He doesn't have to kill him. What a relief. We jump 1,000 years now, 3,000 years ago. David comes. He unites the 12 tribes of Israel and makes his capital right down the hill, what we call today Ir David, the city of David. On this picture here, on the left, if you were to go further down the hill, that's the city of David. It's a very tiny section. By the way, for all those people who seem to think that somehow the temple was in the city of David, the building structures itself of the temple were too big for what today is the city of David. But again, it falls in the category of you Jews are wrong about everything all the time. Okay, so what happens now? Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon. Next slide, please. That's a view of the rock looking down. That's not my picture. First of all, since the year 2000, non-Muslims cannot enter the Dome of the Rock. That's number one. Number two, for reasons of Kiddushah, of sanctity, I couldn't ever go in there. Could never be that close. Okay, so 3,000 years ago, King David. David wanted to build the temple. Never got to do it. That task fell to his son, Shlomo, Solomon, who built a magnificent structure. It was the heart and soul of our people for over 400 years. The prophet Yeshayahu, Isaiah, described it as a house of prayer for all nations. So you think things are good. Understand something. In Israel, we live in the Middle East. Things change all the time. So things were going fine. But about 2,600 years ago, along come the Babylonians from the northeast. They surround Jerusalem, broke through the walls, conquered the city, burned the temple to the ground, and carried the Jewish people off into exile. Al Naharot Bavel, by the rivers of Babylon, we wept. Which, of course, is supposed to be the end of the story. But we all know that didn't happen. Because barely 70 years later, Babylonia is now controlled by Persia. And Koresh, Cyrus, he's the ruler. And he said, hey, y'all Jews, you can go back. Does anyone know the percentage of Jews in the Babylonian exile that went back to Israel? 5%. 95% stayed. I don't know if they opened up falafel shops or what in Babylonia. No idea. But it's interesting, by the way, a statistic. According to Jewish sources, 80% of the children of Israel in slavery in Egypt stayed. 4/5, 80%. Now, we're talking about 95% of the Jews stayed in Babylon after only 70 years of exile. How soon we forget. By the way, another statistic. 99% of American Jews are here in America, not in Israel. Topic for another talk. Okay, so the temple is rebuilt. But they don't have the kind of wealth that King Solomon had. So the building wasn't as large, it wasn't as elaborate, it wasn't as beautiful, but it was still the temple. That temple underwent renovations and enlargement a number of times, which we will get to shortly. Next slide, please. That's an artist's rendering of the temple of King Solomon. I know some of you are thinking, Hanock, is that the way it looked? I'm old, but I'm not that old. Next slide, please. Here's the picture we're all most familiar with. Second temple, 1st century. By the way, in case you're wondering, that is the rendition of the temple that Yeshua went to regularly. And Yeshua's brother, by the way, don't say James. His name was Yaakov, Jacob. How did it become James? I don't know. People say it had something to do with King James and his translation of the Bible, but we're not here to talk about that. Understand something. Herod wanted to enlarge the temple. Now, by the way, in case you're wondering, Herod was catering to his Jewish constituents in Jerusalem. In Caesarea, he built pagan temples and statues. By the way, you go to Israel, you can see it to this day. Problem is, Mount Moriah is a small mountain. Herod, called Herod the Great, by the way, the guy was a megalomaniac, and he was as busy killing his wives and their sons as he was building. But man, could this guy build. He wants to build this huge temple. Mount Moriah is a small, uneven mountain. So what does he do? He builds a giant stone box. And that forms the foundation of the temple. The western wall, which we see here, oh, I don't have my laser pointer. Should have brought the one from Israel that works. No, that's okay. The western wall is a tiny section there. The Western Wall Prayer Plaza. Okay? That box is the foundation of the Temple Mount. See the difference between the structure of the walls and the structure of the temple. The temple itself was huge. It stood 50 meters high. That's 150 feet. The walls themselves, 30 meters high, 90 feet. Don't make the kid from the Bronx do the math. If you need to use your phone, feel free, go right ahead. Okay. The Western Wall is not a wall of the Second Temple. Rather is the part of the outer retaining wall on the western side. Think about that for a second. The Western Wall, okay, perfect analogy. A house with a white picket fence around it. The Western Wall is the western white picket fence. It's not the house. What is special is that rock that we described before, the foundation stone, sat under the back part of the temple. The temple faced east, Mount of Olives. The very back part, the most western part of the temple. The only reason Jews and Christians pray at the Western Wall today is it's because the spot closest to that rock that we can come for public prayer. We're going to talk about what that means, public prayer, and why it isn't. But that is the reason. It is not the wall. It's what the wall is closest to. Next slide, please. Okay. There, you see that section of the Western Wall Prayer Plaza. I'm nowhere near tall enough, but let's see. I am so not. That little section. By the way, that section is 57 meters long. The entire Western Wall is 488 meters long, a half a kilometer, or the size approximately of 5 NFL football fields. When you go on the tour in the Kotel tunnels, in the Western Wall tunnels, you walk through much of that. By the way, all of that excavation is under what we call today the Muslim Quarter. Now, the terminology you hear all the time, Muslim Quarter, Jewish Quarter, Christian Quarter, Armenian Quarter, irrelevant terms. They're not ancient terms. The terms were given to us by the British in 1852. God save the king. Used to be God save the queen. Times change. Okay. In fact, the Muslim Quarter, what we call the Muslim Quarter of today, was largely Jewish until the Arab riots between 1920 and 1939. Largely Jewish until it was ethnically cleansed, which we'll talk about. Next slide, please. Boy, I get really nervous with this time running down. The time didn't move at all on Shabbat. We together collectively made time stand still. Do I have any volunteers to hold up my arms? I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Actually, what I'd like to do is pause in the slides now, and if Pastor Russell could please momentarily play a video of June 1967, when our reserve paratroopers went and liberated the old city of Jerusalem. It's a very short video. It's less than a minute. I'll wait patiently. Thank you. It's incredibly emotional to see that. And it's really devastating to hear the words of General Motagur, who says, Har habayit beyadenu, the Temple Mount is in our hands. because that's where this presentation shifts momentarily. But we've got a few slides showing actual footage of that amazing day in June 1967, where the hand of Hashem enabled Israel to reunite Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, our eternal capital. Jerusalem, which has never, ever been the capital of any other nation ever in history. Understand something, and I've spoken about the Six-Day War here in previous talks. In May of 1967, we thought a second Holocaust was upon us. We had junky French Mirage and Mystère fighter jets, because the Americans wouldn't sell us any military equipment. We had elderly British Centurion tanks. In fact, our soldiers, this was a reserve paratroop regiment. These guys were reservists. They were supposed to parachute into Sinai, but Israel had so rapidly defeated the Egyptians, they were shifted. These men were sent into the old city of Jerusalem. None of them had a street map. For 19 years, Jews weren't allowed into the old city. And still they did. They managed. Unbelievable. Next slide, please. Odd that I put that in there. There must have been a reason. But you'll notice, by the way, the bridge here. That's the Mughrabi Bridge. That is the only entrance to the Temple Mount for us non-Muslims. And we can only visit during certain times of the day. And we cannot, we're absolutely strictly forbidden to pray. Say what? Hopefully I'll have the zchut, the merit, to guide you on the Temple Mount one day. And I will tell you beforehand. Any of you wearing IDF sweatshirts, take them off. Shema Yisrael pendants, take them off. Anything, you cannot bring up your Bible. You cannot bring up a prayer book. And you cannot do anything that even appears to be prayer. You know, like we do, like y'all do. No. It's a sick situation. And it brings us into a term that we're going to be using a couple of times tonight called the status quo. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes, but as defined as recently in 2016, quote, Muslims pray on the Temple Mount, Jews and others can visit. Who said that? Oh, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the guy y'all love so much. Next slide, please. Okay, so there you've got our troops on the Temple Mount. You see them with our flags in front of the Dome of the Rock. By the way, quick little bit of history. The Dome of the Rock is not a mosque. What happened? Remember on Shabbat, for those who were here, and I mentioned that in the year 636, the Umayyads, Muslims from Saudi Arabia, conquered the land of Israel from the Byzantine Christians. In 691, Abd al-Malik builds the Dome of the Rock. It's a shrine around that rock. Now, what you hear today in the media is kind of astounding. You hear that although the Temple Mount is the holiest site on earth to Jews, it is the third holiest site on earth to Muslims. Why? According to Muslim legend, that's where Muhammad, on his winged steed, Burak, landed. By the way, Al-Aqsa just means the furthest mosque. So you would think that on the Dome of the Rock, in elegant Arabic calligraphy, if you've ever seen pictures of it, and tonight, homework assignment, during halftime of the Bucks game, go and look up Dome of the Rock. and you will see this elegant Arabic calligraphy. So if that place was so holy because their prophet Muhammad landed on it, shouldn't all that writing be about Muhammad? Second homework assignment, look up Arabic inscription on Dome of the Rock, translated into English, and it's all about how the Muslims defeated the Christians. And it's an attack on Christianity. They attack the Trinity. They attack the idea that Jesus, they didn't use Yeshua, Jesus could be the Son of God. Really, although they acknowledge Jesus as a prophet. So what it is, all the writing about the Dome of the Rock is, yo, we beat the Christians. 691. Not a word about Muhammad. Interesting. Next slide, please. There it is, our government officials in front of the Dome of the Rock. What we should have done is immediately established prayer rights for every religious group. We have it in Hebron, Ma'arat HaMachpelah, the Cave of the Patriarchs. There are sections available to Muslims all the time, sections available to Jews and Christians. We always include the Christians. Always include the Christians, pray alongside us. Interesting. But we didn't. Next slide, please. That is the hanging of the Israeli flag on top of the Western Wall on the Har HaBayit, on the Temple Mount. It's a good thing they took this picture quickly because Moshe Dayan, our Minister of Defense, the guy with the eye patch, had them take it down almost immediately. Now you see it, now you don't. Next slide, please. One of the greatest pictures I've ever seen in my entire life. Let me explain to you what that is. That's Rav Goren, Rabbi Shlomo Goren, who was the chief rabbi of the Israeli army. Later became chief Ashkenazi rabbi. By the way, in Israel, we're blessed with 2 chief rabbis. And neither of them get along. There's a stereotype right there. But Rav Goren is holding a very small Sefer Torah scroll. He's got a shofar in the other hand. But you see that amazing pillar behind him? He's inside the Dome of the Rock. So by the way, when you hear that, well, ultra-Orthodox Jewish authorities don't allow Jews to go blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. Rav Goren tried to agitate for them to blow up the Dome of the Rock. In fact, Rabbi Yisrael Ariel, who founded the Temple Institute, was one of the reserve paratroopers that was stationed to stand guard in front of the Dome of the Rock because he was sure that the Israeli army engineers were coming any moment to blow it up. By the way, we don't destroy churches or mosques. By the way, I think that's a really good thing. I think that's a really good thing. It's not for us to do that. Next slide, please. That's Moshe Dayan sitting with members of the Islamic Waqf, the Muslim Religious Council, and much to their amazement, gave them the keys back to the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Al-Aqsa Mosque, by the way, is that structure with the dark gray dome. That was built in 705, by the way, by El-Walid, who was Abd al-Malik's son. Okay? So, our Beit HaMikdash, our temple, 3,000 years ago, first temple. The Muslims put up the Dome of the Rock around it 1,400 years ago. Something about that time frame is a little unsettling. Next slide, please. See, I'm doing this cheerfully. What many of you don't realize is the Western Wall was a very narrow area. That's a wall behind it. You see how small that is? And what the Arabs used to do is ride their donkeys through there. Hopefully the donkeys, just had some benefiber, and they, it was absolutely disgusting. The British when the British Army occupied our country between 1917 and 1948, they did not allow us to put up a mechitza, a partition between men and women. They didn't let us do anything. I have no love lost for the British and what they did in my country. Understand something, totally off topic. The British barred entry to the land of Israel for Jews who got out of Europe and were trying to find a place of refuge. Yeah. Okay. So how did we go from that tiny little area to the Western Wall Prayer Plaza that you see today? Next slide. Okay. Without the approval of the government of Israel, Hanock, the mayor of Jerusalem, contacted his friends in the construction industry and arranged for them to bring bulldozers. And without the government approval, they started knocking down the buildings. This was it was a slum. Buildings right up to the Western Wall. Next slide, please. By the way, those two pictures I borrowed from my dear friend Udi Marotz, the blue and white art store in the Cardo. Tremendous artist. He was the first Jewish boy to grow up in the old city of Jerusalem in the Jewish quarter. Great story. His father was a fighter in 1948 as a young man. And he swore if he ever got the opportunity to come back to Jerusalem, he would never leave it. So, 1967, he's one of the liberating troops, and he writes a note. Remember, Al Gore hadn't invented the internet yet, so we had no WhatsApp. It's hard to believe. There was a time like that, once upon a time. He wrote a note to his wife. They lived near Tel Aviv, and he said, "Come with the children, I'm not leaving." Udi was 9 years old. He just had a baby sister, so his mother couldn't leave. So she placed 9-year-old Udi on a bus to go all the way around to Jerusalem. And he grew up there. And there was, everything was rubble. It was amazing. Next time y'all are in Israel, I'll take you to Udi. Amazing man. Next slide, please. All right. This is where things start getting ugly. So an arrangement was made, 1967, that only Muslims would pray on the Temple Mount. Moshe Dayan was a secular Jew. He also was a sexual predator and an antiquities thief. Not the great guy that everyone thinks he was. But that was in an era when people didn't really talk about sexual harassment, particularly not in the Israeli army. Anyway, so the Muslims are in control, quote unquote. So the Waqf, the Islamic Council, is in control on the Temple Mount. Israeli police and army provide security around it. Jews and Christians are forbidden to pray on the Temple Mount. Jordan controls the Islamic Council. That's the way things basically went until 1996. What happened in 1996? Well, Israel is excavating the Western Wall tunnels, which I hope you realize do not go under the Temple Mount, but it's the excavation of the street that ran alongside the Western Wall. Israel opens up the rear exit. By the way, come on the tour with me. You come out on the Via Dolorosa. Station number 1, the Church of the Flagellation. Arabs riot, even though Israel thought they had an agreement with the Waqf that there wouldn't be any trouble. So in a quid pro quo, the Muslims begin unsupervised excavation on the Temple Mount itself. Now, we're told that this was done without the approval of the Israeli government. However, sources now have revealed that the Israeli government knew it because they dug, you see on the top and the debris, they took away 400 dumpster loads of everything that was there. They used a bulldozer and, what do you call those things with a crane? Excavator. Thank you, Ryan. Ryan's always there to back me up. Love you, man. Now understand, Israeli archaeologists say if they would have gone through that area with a toothbrush, that would have been so they just intentionally destroyed, because part of it is to sever the obvious Jewish connection to the Temple Mount. Okay, 1996, 400 dumpsterfuls, and they're dumped in the Kidron Valley. By the way, there's a thing now called the Temple Mount Sifting Project, which is going through all of this. Now, of course, much of it has lost its value because it's no longer in situ, on site. So the cat's out of the bag. The Israeli government took a blind eye because there's no way on earth that the Islamic Waqf or anyone else could have brought up bulldozers to the Temple Mount without the permission of the Israeli police. Wow, what a betrayal. Priceless relics of the Second Temple destroyed. Wait a second. Who was our prime minister then? Oh, Benjamin Netanyahu. You can't make this stuff up. Anyway, in the Arab attempt to cover up the background, I have to bring in, this is a duplicate copy I got on Amazon.com. This is a 1924 brief guide to the Temple Mount, published by the Supreme Muslim Council. And in here, you can get it for $9.99, Amazon.com. Or smile Amazon, and you can donate that money to your favorite charity. I hope you know that. They state unequivocally that that's the site of Solomon's temple. But now, almost 100 years later, they no longer say that. There's, when you read about the Camp David meetings, President Bill Clinton and Dennis Ross, he was I don't know his title at the time, they were meeting with Arafat, and Arafat said unequivocally, there was never a temple on the Temple Mount. Clinton said something like, "You must be kidding me." It's unbelievable. So the status quo was altered by the Muslims, but that's not the only thing. They've done 3 other major things since the 70s. First of all, they turned the Dome of the Rock in the 70s and 80s to be used by some people as a mosque. Had never been done. The Al-Marwani Mosque, by the way, was in an area called Solomon's Stables. See, the Crusaders had no idea. They came on the Temple Mount. They see this huge underground area, and they said, this must be where King Solomon kept his horses. It wasn't. They've dug it out, and they've created a mosque. Because there was a concern that they had that the crazy Jews would go up on the Temple Mount and build a synagogue. God forbid, huh? So yeah. There's also under Al-Aqsa, they built another mosque called Ancient Al-Aqsa, and they built another mosque near the Golden Gate, the Gate of Mercy, Sharei HaRachamim. So this stuff goes on all the time. But things have changed. Next slide, please. Okay. So although people flock from all over the world to go to the Western Wall, more and more and more Jews have been ascending the Temple Mount. Now understand something. It is incredibly uncomfortable to go up with a Jewish group to the Temple Mount. The police segregate you. They check you practically till your undies to make sure you're not bringing up an Israeli flag, God forbid, or a siddur or a prayer book. You're isolated. You're surrounded by police who are filming you. They're not there for your protection. Are filming you to make sure you're not praying. Now, I have found, by the way, it's moments like that when you actually can realize how many Psalms you know by heart. It's really remarkable. By the way, you don't have to stand there like this going. Or, by the way, another trick that people use is they pull out their phone, like, they're getting like an urgent WhatsApp, and it's Tehila, prayer. Okay, so what's going on? 51,000 Jews ascended the Temple Mount this past year. We have never had an amount that large. Now understand, when we go up to the Temple Mount, we immerse in a mikveh, in a ritual bath. We do not wear leather shoes. It's not like, hey, what are we doing now? Let's go for pizza. Now, you know what? Let's go up to the Temple Mount first. So it's a big deal. Why? What is going on now? I can tell you off the top of my head at least 15 organizations in Israel that are involved in one degree or another in the study of the temple, the preparing of the para aduma, the red heifer, the parochet, the curtains. It's amazing what's going on. Next slide, please. Is there a next slide? There may not be. The light is the answer a giant no? No. Okay, so we'll stay with this slide. Is that a good idea? It's a very good idea. Okay, so understand a few things. I mentioned this to people recently, and they didn't believe me. It's not the first time this has ever happened in my life. And then they thought about it, and people have called me up afterwards and said, oh my God, I can't believe you pointed that out. We are living in a period of time right now. This is the first time in history where the Jewish people have had sovereignty in Jerusalem and have not had a temple. The first time ever. Every other period in history, when we have been sovereign in our land, we've had a Beit HaMikdash, the temple. So as the saying goes, it's time. Now, what's interesting is they've been surveying the average Israeli. Dudu and Shmulik and Osnat. By the way, you ever notice these, not all Hebrew names sound as good in English? That's like when people say, Hanock, your name is so hard to pronounce. Why don't you get a real Israeli name? So I say, you mean like Dudu? Maybe not. Maybe not. Understand what is happening now. The average Israeli does not understand why there is apartheid against the Jewish people in the land of Israel. The Temple Mount is 144,000 square meters. I know you're all thinking, I didn't study the metric system. 35 acres. The Temple Mount is 35 acres. There's plenty of room. I remember standing with my teacher, Rabbi Meir Kahana. By the way, you should Google him tonight, and you'll understand why I'm a little extreme. Rav Kahana, by the way, was murdered in 1990 in New York City, where he was visiting on a speaking tour, by an operative of Al-Qaeda. No one cared about Al-Qaeda. This is 1990. In 1993, the first World Trade Center bombing occurred, and they got all these boxes of documents that they never really bothered to translate until 9/11, 2001. The destruction of the World Trade Centers, the attack on the Pentagon, the plane that was taken down in Pennsylvania. And then everyone started to hear about Al-Qaeda. So my teacher, this is 1976, we're standing up in the Jewish Quarter and we're looking at the Temple Mount. And he just kind of said, in passing, 2 shoulder-held missiles, what you could. And then he looked at me and said, no, that's not what you're here for. And it took me years later to reflect on that conversation and realize that's exactly what he thought I was there for. But I don't think the Dome of the Rock should be destroyed. It's not for us. Anything that is even perceived as an attack on, the Muslims every day are screaming, by the way, the terminology they use, Al-Aqsa is in danger. They refer to the entire Temple Mount, all 35 acres, as Al-Aqsa. One of our ministers, Itamar Ben-Gvir, the other day, our Minister of National Security went up and spent 13 minutes on the Temple Mount walking. He wasn't praying. The world lost its mind. The American government, this is unacceptable, a change in the status quo. What the heck are you talking about? They can build mosques. One of our ministers can't. It's a provocation. Seriously. Dementia is not an excuse for being stupid. Come on, Hanock, tell us how you really feel. Okay. We are at a time in history where the wrongs of history need to be righted. And what's astounding to me, okay, here we go a little bit off topic. Former President Trump recently made a statement where he referred to Jews, not Republican Jews, Jews as being unloyal. He meant, of course, to him. Now, the thing that's astounding to me to this day, and I'm going to use this opportunity to share this, because no one else is going to tell you this. Bless my heart. Trump had some really high-powered advisors. And Trump did a number of things on behalf of the state of Israel, and he constantly whined afterwards that why is it that Jews in America still vote Democrat? He kept saying it, still does. Man, I should have been hired as an advisor, and I would have explained to them that the vast majority of Jews in this country are Americans who by accident of birth were born of a Jewish mother. They have no education. They've never studied the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible. We're talking about at least 4 generations, except for the modern Orthodox and the ultra-Orthodox, which in America is usually called yeshivish. You don't see them too much around here. Go to Miami, the guys in the black hats, white shirts, black suit jacket. Understand something. They don't care about Israel. 70% of American Jews have never visited Israel a single time. And that's 70% with birthright that gives college-age Jewish students a 10-day free party in Israel. I get really crazed about this because I don't understand what they don't understand. Jared Kushner should have figured this out. Jason Greenblatt. Ambassador Friedman. Come on, guys. It's silly. How many Jews are in the Republican Party? Small number. Who cares? It's not an agenda. We do not have significant aliyah from the United States. An average of 3,500 American Jews go on aliyah every year. Out of a population exceeding, some people still say 6 million. I think there's about 4.8 to 5 million Jews. Israel isn't on their agenda. And, I turn to you guys because you're as crazy sold out on Israel as I am. Y'all are nuts, which is why I love you so much. You're my kind of nuts. We've got mixed nuts, we've got cashews, we've got walnuts, we've got pistachios. We've got pumpkin seeds. I love pumpkin seeds now. They're supposed to be good for my health. Anyway, so we keep looking, saying, I don't understand why Jews don't go. I don't understand why Jews don't vote Republican. I don't understand what you don't understand anymore. Trump kept saying, look what I did for Israel. Someone should have whispered, Donald, the people you're talking about don't care about Israel. Come on. He's got a daughter that's Jewish. Let her explain it to him. But poor Ivanka was the one that said the Western Wall is the holiest site on earth to the Jewish people. So maybe she doesn't know. The reason we're studying the temple, when I leave Brandon on Wednesday morning, I'm going to a temple conference in Orlando. By the way, temperature in Orlando is 75 degrees. As far as I'm concerned, I will finally be in Florida. No offense. Now that's run by friends of mine, but there is not only an interest in Israel. It's not just studying the temple, like going to Machon HaMikdash, the Temple Institute. It is the idea that people are leading tours up there, that Jews are saying, I don't understand why there's apartheid. Now understand something. When Jordan invaded our country in 1948 and captured all of Judea, all of Samaria, and the Jewish quarter, the old city of Jerusalem, they ethnically cleansed the Jewish quarter. They got rid of every Jewish person that lived there, either put them in prison or expelled them, and blew up every single synagogue and building they could find. Nobody talks about that. Anyway, so we are at a time, for such a time as this. This is the time that Hashem, that God has brought us to understand what's going on. Now, the thing that's interesting is I prepared 2 PowerPoint presentations for this trip. I've never done that before. And I only found one location that was interested in hearing this one on the Temple Mount. Big shock, it was at Beit Tehila. I know you'll all be sitting there saying, wow, I'm gobsmacked. I had no idea. So even amongst the people that love Israel the most, this is still kind of a fringy topic. And I don't understand why. The 2 core issues right now that the world are losing their minds over is Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria and the Temple Mount. There aren't any other issues, in my humble opinion, that are nearly as important as those. So that's why we went over maps and history on Shabbat, and why tonight we're talking about the Temple Mount. This is where it's all coming down. And I don't care what Anthony Blinken, your Secretary of State, has to say about it. Unacceptable. Really? Go tell your kids they're doing something unacceptable. Do not talk to my nation like that. It's not going to work out well for you, Blinken, I've been thinking. No. Biden, I'm sending Jake Sullivan there. Ooh. Jake Sullivan, by the way, is your national security advisor. You know, it's a little disconcerting when I mention names of people in the American government and people look at me like, who are you talking about? It's not just Biden. And by the way, I know Pastor Nick shared with me that some of you had approached him and asked him if I had any classified documents with me. I want to assure you, I can neither confirm nor deny. I did not take those documents no. Understand, we're talking about the change of the history of the world here tonight. I do hope for your sakes that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win. I do hope that. First of all, years ago when I used to follow football, there were two teams in the NFL that we despised in the Bronx. One was the Philadelphia Eagles. One was the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I'll be honest with you, for about 35 years, I couldn't have cared less. And I still don't. But for your sake, for those of you who are sitting, understand this. There are probably people in Catholic churches here in the Tampa area that are saying the rosary on behalf of the Buccaneers. People take sports seriously. This is America. That was a long time ago. Har habayit beyadenu. The Temple Mount is in our hands. It was. We had a once-in-a-thousand-year opportunity to enable Jewish and Christian prayer on the Temple Mount. Dayan didn't even consult with our prime minister, Levi Eshkol, who was a very weak prime minister. Dayan got all the credit for the victory in the Six-Day War. Do you know he was appointed Minister of Defense 2 weeks before the war? All the planning was done by our chief of staff, a guy by the name of Yitzhak Rabin. Usually pronounce it as Rabin here in America. He's the guy that did it. He should have been the hero. He wasn't. So Dayan, and by the way, there was a thing at the time that the American government was going to give Israel, they didn't even sell us weapons at that time, they were going to give Israel something like 50 fighter jets to bring Dayan over to Vietnam and advise the American government on how to win the war. That never happened, by the way. That was the plan. That was the offer. Here we are. The Temple Mount can be in our hands again. I urge you, when you're in Israel, go with a group that knows what they're talking about, that will take you up to the Temple Mount, that will show you where to go, where not to go. For me, as a Jew, as a guide, it is the most difficult place for me to take a group. I constantly have to remind myself of what was and what will be. The only other place that even approaches difficulty for me is Yad Vashem. Because in Yad Vashem, there's a brief film clip, there are a lot of them, of two sisters sitting in the street starving. And I'm sorry, it reminds me of my daughters. The Temple Mount belongs to us. It is ours. The temple stood there. The temple will stand there again. Together, we can share this message. And I hope a lot of people online will share this. I know Pastor Russell already put up my talk from Shabbat. Hopefully this one will be up soon. We have a few minutes left. Does anyone have any questions? Please. Hang on 1 second. Sorry to make you get up, Ryan.
Okay, one question. Yes. With what you just shared.
Yes.
Man, I feel this by the Spirit. What, knowing your experience and all this that you know, what would it take for the Jewish people and the Christians? Do you guys have like a game plan or a vision to get that temple back?
Okay, great question. It depends which group of yous guys, by the way, that's how we spoke in the Bronx. Y-O-U-S-Z, yous. Y'all say y'all. Either way, there are groups that right now, as we speak, are working on every element of how the temple actually functioned, how it will function, all the things going on. Now, if you're asking me, does my government feel that way? No. Also, like people say, well, why don't you guys just go up there and just take it down? I said, off the top of my head, I can give you a billion reasons. Each and every one of them is a Muslim that would go to war forever. By the way, the European Union, the United Nations, the United States government, it would be, now's not the time. People ask me all the time, Hanock, when will the temple be rebuilt? My answer, when we want it bad enough. We're getting there now. We're studying. We're going up to the Temple Mount. People are even able to pray surreptitiously from time to time. By the way, every time I've gone up with a Jewish group hoping to pray, that hasn't happened. I'm evidently like the kiss of death for that. Other questions? I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Could you repeat that, please?
Hanock, did you say in the beginning that it was Saudi who built the Dome of the Rock?
The Saudis? No. It was Abd al-Malik of the Umayyads, who they originally came from Mecca, Saudi Arabia. Yeah. There was no Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a modern creation, right. 20th century.
Do you think the Saudis would ever want it?
They want every element of Israel.
Yeah.
Every
I mean,
last
to take it back, to take it to Saudi.
No, because they've been living with this fiction that's where Muhammad on his winged steed, touched down. Ground control to Major Tom. Okay, I didn't understand that question either. You're just way too cute. I'm talking to the baby. Don't get nervous. Don't get nervous. Anything else?
The pile of debris there by the ramp going up.
Yes.
What is that from?
Okay, that was all from the area built up later in the Muslim periods. Like when you go to the southern steps, you see like there was the remnants of an Umayyad palace and something from the Ayyubids, the Abbasids, the Fatimids. Yeah, so that was part of that. And that is a rickety bridge. It is precarious, and one day it'll collapse. Israel has offered repeatedly to build a permanent structure. Muslim response, you're altering the status quo. They could build mosques, we can't build one bridge so people don't get killed one day when that collapses. Insane. And we have a follow-up question. Okay.
How long do you think it would take to build a new bridge on there once you got it back? You think?
A matter of weeks. Yeah, I don't. It's not a major. It's not like the Triborough Bridge in New York. This is really small stuff. Hi.
Hi. I got an idea.
I'd love to hear it.
Okay.
I say that now.
If you have a nice sized group that you're going to lead, can you get together with the other tourist guides that have nice sized group and get a huge amount of people and all go up there and all start praying? And they can't arrest everybody all at once.
Well, they can throw you guys out of the country and they can arrest us.
I just felt overwhelmed and I dropped down. And these Arab people came running towards me all upset.
Yeah, that's from the Waqf, the Islamic Council. Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't know very many tour guides that would risk their livelihoods to take a group to do that, number one. Number two, you're underestimating the effectiveness of our police and border police to break up a group or riot and arrest people. Now, this is coming from someone who had been arrested on 3 different continents by the time I was 20 years old. I know a little bit about civil disobedience and sit-downs and riots and getting into it with police. And I used to not take it seriously until that day that I had the loaded 9mm Glock. I knew it was a Glock. Pointed right in my eye. Yeah. And I was a police officer. Bless his heart. Yeah. We had just destroyed $15,000 worth of windows. It was for a good cause. I could tell you about it later. Anything else? Hi.
Hi. In 2018, I had the privilege and honor to go up there with Hayobel.
Great.
And it was like the 70, I believe it was 70th anniversary. So a bunch of us had that shirt that said celebrating with the Star of David.
Yeah.
And they made everyone, the WAF came and made everyone cover up.
Yep.
And it was the most uncomfortable experience in all of Israel because we were being followed. And Hayobel had the wisdom to hire a private guard that seemed to be Israeli police, I assume. And the WAF were ready to snatch up, especially there was a professor that he was taking pictures and they were ready to grab him and grab his phone.
Yeah.
And every time they came close, he pointed to the guard, said, "You better not touch me." And the guard would say something to him in Arabic and he would back off.
Yeah, it's a very uncomfortable situation. You mentioned 2018. Yes, 2018 was our 70th anniversary.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I can do the math, means that this year is our 75th anniversary.
Amen.
Baruch Hashem, thank God. Israel is 3,000 years old, almost about to be 75 years young. The single biggest proof that we have of any Bible believer in the world that Hashem, God, makes a promise and fulfills it.
My question was,
Yes.
I always wondered, the WAF is supposed to have ultimate authority up there. Why that guard that came with us, why did they listen to him and back off?
I have no idea because I have no idea who that was. I have no idea.
Okay.
I've never heard of a situation like that before.
Okay. I
So I don't know.
thought maybe Israeli police or something had
I
authority.
cannot imagine an off-duty Israeli policeman going up to the Temple Mount and serving as a private guard and retaining his position as an Israeli police officer.
I've been multiple times with Hayabel. If I had to guess, I would say it was a police group, that there was probably on-duty police. And that's why they listened to him, because the walk for unarmed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
Right, because the Israeli police enforce the Waqf's rules, right?
Yes. So if they come running and they say, this guy was praying or he bent down, and I always make it, in fact, for those of you who are my friends on Facebook, by the way, if you're on Facebook and you're not my friend, shame on you. My current cover pic is me on the Temple Mount a few years ago, kneeling, showing something, because we're not supposed to kneel. So I always find some reason to kneel down to show someone something over there. I must have forgotten the rules. I'm sorry. Anything else? Well, I want to thank you all so much for coming tonight. The time I've spent with you over the last few days has been wonderful. I want to thank Pastor Nick, Pastor Danielle, Pastor Tikva, Tim, everyone always goes out of their way for me here. And I so much appreciate it. I look forward to seeing y'all in Israel. Remember, Beit Tehila, October, be there or be square. I know there's a large group going to Hayovel. It's gratifying for me to see people who are so in love with Israel and the Jewish people. It's not just me, by living in Israel, that gets to fulfill biblical prophecy on a daily basis. y'all do it too. So may Hashem give you strength, bless you in all you do, and I'll see you all soon. Thank you.